Hey, I'm Vinny and this is Makeify. I recently got one of these Dust Deputy Cyclone dust collector thingies, and I was looking online for videos showing how to attach it to a bucket, and I really couldn't find any good videos, so I decided to make one. So I'm going to attach this to a 5-gallon plastic bucket, and I'm going to show you how I do it. The supplies I used were a 5-gallon plastic bucket, a lid for the bucket, and this lid has a rubber gasket on the inside that makes an airtight seal with the bucket. A piece of rubber gasket material that can be found at most hardware stores in the plumbing section, usually near the O-rings, and 6 1/4 inch by 20 bolts and nuts. I downloaded a template from the Oneida Air Systems website and printed out a few copies. I cut one down a little and applied spray adhesive, then stuck it to the lid. I drilled out the holes for the bolts with a 5/16 inch drill bit. Then use an X-Acto knife to cut out the 3-inch hole in the center. Then I removed the template. I got another copy of the template and cut it down to size. Then use spray adhesive again to attach it to a piece of rubber gasket material. I tried drilling out the bolt holes again, but the rubber was too soft and it didn't really work. So I used an X-Acto knife to cut out those holes. And I also cut out the center hole. I removed the template and placed the Dust Deputy on the rubber. Then trace the bottom of the Dust Deputy onto the rubber with a pencil. Then I cut out my new gasket. I lined up the holes in the lid, gasket, and Dust Deputy and attached all 3 with bolts and nuts. You could use a bead of silicone caulk instead of the rubber gasket if you wanted. Unfortunately, the lid was too flimsy and didn't make a good seal with the gasket and the Dust Deputy, so I got a piece of 1/2 inch thick plywood and found the center by finding the intersection of the diagonals. Then used my circle cutting jig and my bandsaw to cut out a circle with a 10-inch diameter. I used spray adhesive to attach a 3rd copy of the template to the wood circle. Then I drilled out the bolt holes and used a coping saw to cut out the center hole. A jigsaw or scroll saw would have been faster, but I don't have either of those. I replaced the 3/4 inch long bolts with longer 1-inch ones because the plywood would add too much thickness for the smaller bolts. And I also got some washers. I lined up the wood circle with the lid and the gasket and the Dust Deputy. Then use the bolts, nuts, and washers to attach everything together. I snapped the lid on the bucket and it was ready for use. So there you go, it's pretty easy. You attach your hose to your vacuum to this port, and then to this port you attach a hose to the tool or whatever you're trying to collect dust for. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to keep up to date with my newest videos. If you really like the things I do, you can support me on Patreon, just like my top Patreon supporter, Michael Thomas. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for watching. Hey, I'm Vinny and this is Makeify. Hey, I'm Vinny and this is Makeify. Like my top Patreon supporter, Michael Thomas. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for watching. Yeah, wowzers. If you really like the things I do, you can support me on Patreon, just like my Try it again.